During our last episode, we talked about the Apple resources you need to be successful and how you can connect them all together to build the ultimate zero-touch workflow, also known as ADE, Automated Device Enrollment. Here's a QR code to Apple's KBase titled Use Automated Device Enrollment. And a quick aside about one of the benefits of ADE and why it's so important. By using automated device enrollment, you will not see this message when enrolling Macs with Apple Silicon chips, the M1, the M2, and now the M3 series. I'm talking about the what I consider to be the very scary looking message with a warning symbol that says this MDM server requests the ability to manage kernel extensions and software updates. To allow this, reboot and recovery and enable MDM management in startup disk. We have a KBase article that goes into details about this message. And I want to be clear that this is not a limitation of Addigy. This is exactly how Apple intends for this to work. And they have their own article on this as part of their Mac OS user guide. Speaking of user guides, Apple has several great guides available at support.apple.com. Here are a few of them on topics that we've mentioned, plus a couple others. They have a lot more, although I could not find a central listing of all of them. If anyone knows of that listing, I'd love for you to share. And within the macOS user guide, a special call out is a section that speaks to those switching from Windows to Mac. So if you're an MSP who has tier 1 support staff who feel more comfortable on Windows than Mac, I would introduce them to this. And if you want to take it a step further, our training partner in the UK, Influential Training, they have a great course called Mac Support for PC Technicians. Although the trainers are in the UK, they did assure me that this course is available to anyone in any location. Please contact them for more information. And as a bonus, for those who are watching the presentation live or recorded, we have a discount code. You can save 20% through the end of the year by using coupon code Apple20. Thank you to Influential Training for this offer. Apple has two additional resources I want to call out. The first is Apple Seed for IT. And last time I checked, anyone with a managed Apple ID can log in and get started with Apple Seed. Remember, you can create a managed Apple ID using your Apple Business Manager account. As the name implies, this is tech-focused. It's where you can get pre-release software and a planning guide for how to configure your devices, how to test, and how to provide feedback to Apple. It's also where you can download the Mac evaluation utility, which unfortunately we don't have time to talk about today, but I recommend you check it out. The second resource is Apple Seed, a very similar name, but built for a different audience. SEED, in this case, is an acronym, and it stands for Sales, Enablement, Education, and Development. It offers a large library of sales, and I would describe it as light or high-level technical resources. Here's a section on Apple Business Manager, and here's another one with details on what's new for IT. And if you search for those, you'll find them within SEED. Apple Seed is designed to ensure that anyone selling or servicing an Apple product knows exactly what they're talking about. It's not intended for the general public. You can get access to it with your membership in the Apple Consultants Network. And if you are a member, check your ACM box folder for details of how to get access. Apple has a lot of great training content publicly available, and this is relatively new within the past few years. I recommend checking out their IT training courses titled Learn How to Deploy and Manage Apple Devices. Has about 12 hours of content. And they have another one titled Learn How to Support Apple Devices, which they say has over 14 hours of content. Both are great resources for anyone who is motivated to learn on their own. And these guided exercises are built to help you prepare for Apple certification exams. Also, Apple's done a great job of keeping these up to date. They recently, at least recently to me, I discovered they updated the deployment and management course with a new volume focused on Mac security and compliance. So I think this is a great resource you definitely want to visit and possibly revisit. And finally, the last Apple resource I want to mention is the developer area. And I would caution that many of you don't need to go this deep, and this is actually where a lot of people at Addigy spend their time. But if you find it interesting, it is another resource to learn more about the possibilities available to you when managing Apple devices. And here's a QR code to a link about what's new in managing Apple devices from WWDC, the most recent one this summer. So moving on, here are a few of the Apple admin focus conferences happening throughout the world. And if you're a Mac admin or have been for any period of time, I'm sure you know about these. But for those MSPs living in the Windows world, these conferences are where you want to send your Apple-focused admins. And I've attended the one in Sweden a few times. It's fantastic. I've spoken at the one in Australia, so of course I'm going to recommend it if you can get the travel budget approved. And Mac admins here in the US at Penn State is very popular. Apple focused podcast. Here are a few of my favorites. Apple at Work. I love the shorter 20 to 30-minute format. It's kind of just right for me. And then if you prefer a longer format, definitely check out Mac Admin's podcast. And I have a few more resources I want to just let everyone know about. A great resource from the Mac product team at Microsoft is macadmins.software. It certainly will not win any beauty awards, but it's got the links, and I think you'll find a lot of valuable information there, especially if you support any of the Microsoft products on Mac. And if you're serious about supporting Macs, I recommend looking at joining Mac Admin Slack. I know Reddit is very popular, but Mac Admin Slack does have a respectable 60,000 members, and it's not publicly searchable like Reddit. So if you rely on a search engine to find information, you're missing what's available to you at Mac Admin Slack. And how about blogs? Here are a few that I recommend you follow. And please share in chat or our subreddit the blogs that you recommend. This brings me to my final slide before we bring out Preetham. And these are the Addigy resources. We have a resources page, which I did not know we had when I was an Addigy customer. Maybe it's new, or maybe we didn't have it, or maybe I just learned about it. We also have a training, including the free Addigy Academy Basics. So at the very minimum, I would recommend your team get involved in that. We also have a blog, and today on our blog, we released an article that is a companion piece to this series titled How Windows IT Teams Can Be Successful with Apple at Work. And let's see, we have support resources and an amazing support team. And in fact, the support team is one of the reasons why I moved my MSP to Addigy. We have monthly pseudo talks where we go deep into the technical features of Addigy. And every other week, we host a live demo. So I encourage you to join and ask questions during those demos. And of course, I'm also a resource, and a relatively new resource. I've only been here for a few months. Please take advantage of my MSP experience. I love to brainstorm with clients on solutions. And this is my reminder to mention today's poll. So I think Natalie's going to put a poll up right now. The Addigy sales team, there it is, would like to know if you want to be contacted. We want to ensure you have the resources you need to be successful. Thanks for filling out that poll. Those are the resources I wanted to introduce to you. Again, please share in the chat or our subreddit any additions. We're all in this together. So let's talk with Preetham. You worked at Apple, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
That's correct. And what is it that you worked on when you were at Apple?
So, hey everyone. When I was at Apple, I had the opportunity to build this small little tool called Apple School Manager, and then which later became Apple Business Manager. So, if you guys love Apple Business Manager, thank you. And yeah, if there's any criticism about it, I'm going to duck and hide right now.
Yeah. I'm sure there's no criticism at all about Apple Business Manager. But so I was curious if you could kind of share the origins of Apple School Manager or Apple Business Manager. Like when Apple contacted you and said, hey, we want to build this, what did they know what they were building exactly? Or
yeah, that's a good question. So this was back in 2015, where like So the biggest part, like the primary driver for Apple, is education. And Steve Jobs believed that education is the core DNA of Apple. And, like jokingly, people say you have to catch your users young, is like have them use Apple products right from schools, and like they become the future CEOs who drive the Apple growth, which kind of is paying off right now. If you see, like people started to bring Apple devices, but the biggest threat vector for Apple at that point in time was Google Chromebooks in education space, because as we all know, education is a price sensitive market, and Google Chromebooks being cheap and it was easier to manage. And at that point, Apple did not have a compelling solution. We only had Profile Manager at that point, but you
Mm-hmm.
needed a Mac, so you needed an Apple admin dedicated to that Mac machine, and like there were so many aspects to it. So I was brought in, and the first thing I was told was, "Hey, can you help us build an MDM?" So essentially, the code word was like, "Let's build Profile Manager in the cloud," which is exactly the opposite of what we wanted to do. We ended up doing actually. So we started to do a lot of discovery, and the biggest part of that was talking to customers like this and having them open, honest conversations, understanding where the problems were and what was that we were trying to solve for. And so at Apple, like it's always about telling a story. So if you see any Apple, any solution, any product launch, it's always about telling a story. It's
Mm-hmm.
and Apple's obsessed with that, and that's the thing that I learned there, and then that's what I bring. And what was the story we were trying to tell with this? So you buy a device, like it should be super simple, shipping a device to the user, like opening the box, like that's an amazing experience of opening an Apple device. And not many people know this, but if you actually unbox an Apple device and if you hold the top of the box, it actually slides down
Mm-hmm.
at a pace. It's actually like it's engineered to a point where all devices do it at exactly the same time. It's weird, but they're obsessed to that level of detail.
Yeah.
So it starts there. It's about having that experience, getting that out of box experience, and what is the story we can deliver. And so Apple. So I was fortunate to be part of the team that actually built DEP, which is now
Mm-hmm.
automated device enrollment, but it was device enrollment program at that point. So we had that piece. So that's when I worked with a bunch of internal research, UX researchers, and then we would talk to a lot of customers, and we had this master plan, which was like four pillars. One being the DEP, which is ADE, and volume purchase plan for the apps and distribution, managed Apple IDs, which you see now, and fourth being the MDM. So that's the story we were trying to tell, is from the beginning to like getting a device out of the box to getting the content on it to assigning a users to it, and then managing the device and the entire life cycle from
Yeah.
opening the box to managing the devices. That was a powerful story. And so Apple School Manager, like in retrospect, it feels like it's a slam dunk right now, but back then we had
Mm-hmm.
nothing to look to point to that, say this is the great experience. But now you could see Microsoft doing something similar with like Autopilot. So now it makes sense, but back then it was very new, and it was very difficult to put a stake in the ground and say,
Yeah.
yeah, this is slam dunk. But it was an interesting challenge, and yeah, so that was the humble origins of Apple School Manager.
And I'm anticipating some people may say, well, Apple Business Manager, Apple School Manager is not that easy. However, I would argue that from an end user perspective, if all the hard work is done in the background, it does
Mhm.
appear easy and magical, and it works really
Right.
well in a really secure way.
Oh, absolutely. So the whole goal is for the end users to see all they have to do is open the box and then turn on the device, and
Hmm.
bam, you have all the controls you need.
Yeah.
And all the apps are deployed, and all the content is there, and all restrictions you want to apply, and it's up and ready for you to use the device. And that was the story.
Something you mentioned that caught my ear was managed Apple IDs. So that
Mhm.
was something in the beginning that was talked
Yeah.
about. Uh,
So yeah,
And
the biggest.
the follow-up question for you to think about is, did do you think Apple had a clear plan on how those would be utilized, or are they just making it up as they go along?
Well, um, funny enough is that even though I'm not at Apple right now, a lot of the roadmap is still being stuff that we conceived back then. So
Hmm.
we do think far ahead and then
Hmm.
scale it down back and then move things. And obviously, certain things have changed since then, but the nature of the business we are in, because the requirements change and the technologies change. But managed Apple IDs, the biggest driver for us was um, a lot of admins, because back then it was only user-based application deployment, like BPP.
Hmm.
Um, so Apple reluctantly did device-based volume purchase plan, where you're tying the license to a device instead of the user, because the whole idea of shared device was a big thing, especially in education, because they can't afford to have a device to a kid. What if they want to share? So the biggest thing about Apple was we want to assign things to the user. So it doesn't matter which device you care, like you log into, all your content is there. It roams
Hmm.
with you, which was the biggest story we wanted to tell. So managed Apple ID is that. So we need an ID that can travel with you. And uh, so initially we wanted to build, because a lot of IT admins, okay, the way they were trying to do it were they were spinning up a VM, have a script that hits Apple servers and then starts creating Apple IDs, like user 001 at Apple at
Oh, right.
iCloud.com, something like that. And if you know anything about security, it's awfully like like attack, or you're
Hmm.
doing it. So Apple's going to shut down that server, like, oh, this request is coming from this IP address, so they're going to
I
pull that.
remember, yeah, reading or experiencing that. Yes.
Right, so they're going to spin up a new VM and then do it again until they reach
Mhm.
their desired limit of Apple IDs, and then they're going to stop. But what we decided was there should be an easier and a quicker way for you to have those Apple IDs. And the biggest driver for that was once you have an ID, there's so many things you can assign to it. So today, everything is about the device, like managing the device. The profiles are user, like very device specific.
Hmm.
There are few user-based profiles, but primarily it's device-based. Imagine if it's all user, then it doesn't matter which device. You can log into any device you want to go, and all your configurations and everything moves with you. But for that ultimate final goal, first step was to create those managed Apple IDs. So because it was primarily targeted at education first, we did the SIS, the Student Information Systems first, and then Azure, and then we did the obvious easier step for us was CSV uploads. Like you can upload a bunch of CSVs and
Hmm.
create Apple IDs for that. So yeah, that's the
Yeah.
beginnings for
I think that's definitely something that the Apple always has a plan, right? And they may be several years out trying to achieve that. And I think where IT people like myself struggle is we don't often Apple doesn't often share that long-term vision. So sometimes
right,
they do things that seem frustrating to us.
right.
And it's like, okay, why would you ever do that to an IT admin? And I think the answer is always that they have a long-term plan for the end user, right? And they're going to get there, whether you like it or not. And I would argue maybe they should share a little more than they do. But they've come a long way. I mean, we talked about the
Sure.
Apple Seed for IT, where you can get access to the beta program and
Right.
do testing, and um, so they're making improvements.
Yeah, 100%. So it's always been that case. Like that was the biggest complaint with Apple, especially like even internally to Apple. That was the case. Because when I was working on this project, like there were close to 5 or 6 different teams that had to work on to make it happen. And those teams could only look only this far into the future, because like
Mm.
super into the future was super secretive. And that's how exactly it works. Like everything that you hear about Apple is exactly how it works internally, super
Yeah,
secretive. So we break it into smaller chunks that make sense to that teams, but the larger vision would be revealed to the teams first and then to the wider audience. But yes, I agree, that's a valid criticism.
yeah. I mean, even the I remember when um, Apple Business Essentials was released, nobody that I knew of knew about it.
Right.
And even some people at Apple that I talked to, they said I found out just like you did.
Right.
They didn't know.
But funny enough, Business Essentials was not new. Like I mentioned, this was conceived in 2015 when we talked about the four pillars. The first being, the ADE, the DEP at that point, volume purchase plan, managed Apple IDs, and fourth being MDM. At that point, we were looking to build our own MDM, and so my biggest thing was we have integrations today. Like for DEP, we have integrations, so we need to drive that forward. And it was never the goal for us to, take over the business of Jamf or take over business of Addigy or take over business of any likes of any other MDM vendors out there. So, and one of the core tenets that guiding principles for us at Apple was what we're trying to do is build a reference platform. So I would not be too worried about Business Essentials trying to take over Addigy business or any other MDM vendor out there, primarily because MDM, like even back when on-premise was a thing, Profile Manager always existed. And that was just a reference platform. And Apple always uses those platforms to build these brand new functionalities, but then that's always exposed to MDM vendors because and they leverage Profile Manager or Business Essentials in this case as a proof of concept for MDM vendors such as ourselves to learn and how to build, and then we continue to build it. So that would still be true because trying to take away the core businesses, like trying to hurt businesses like Addigy and the likes of other MDM vendors out there who were instrumental in the success of Apple in enterprise, would not be the best strategy for Apple, and Apple knows that really well, which is why the whole developer relations that they maintain is primarily that. And so the use cases would be super targeted, and they're very minimal, and they're going to be. So that's good. So Business Essentials, yeah. So to a lot of employees even at Apple, it was surprised because I was working at even 2015, so we started to work on it, and then I was responsible for evaluating and the eventual acquisition of Fleetsmith, which is what Business Essentials now feeds into. So yeah.
Yeah, I think despite the initial maybe confusion in the marketplace when Apple released Apple Business Essentials, I think it's been a good thing for the entire industry because it brings more awareness to managing Apple devices, which is something that I still run up against where people believe, incorrectly in my view, that Apple devices in business don't need to be managed like Windows machines. And so I think now Apple's helping bring that awareness. And as you said, testing some things that we can all benefit from. So I think that's great. So speaking of what was something you said earlier reminded me that, well, I don't know if I can ask you this. We were talking about user managed Apple IDs and having a user account. And can I ask you, do you think we'll see a user account in Addigy sometime in the future? Or is it too soon to ask?
It's too early for me to talk too much about it, but yes. So we are actively investing a lot of time and energy into it, and the team is evaluating bringing managed Apple IDs into Addigy. So a lot of fun stuff there. So yeah, a lot to
and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I know you were going to share here a couple items on the roadmap, and we're going to go into a lot more detail next week during the customer meeting. But what are some things that maybe you can mention about the roadmap of Addigy?
Oh, cool. So my favorite being Addigy is a premier MDM solutions out there that takes compliance on Mac devices super seriously, and so if you've been an Addigy customer already, you've experienced that with Mac OS devices. So we do support Mac OS Sonoma day one today, and we're bringing that to iOS devices. So we're bringing that to iOS 16 and iOS 17 devices. So that I'm super excited for.
And that's the compliance.
That's the CIS compliance, bringing that to iOS devices.
Yeah, very cool.
And in the realm of compliance, we're super excited to announce the eventual coming of multi-tenancy for Microsoft conditional access. So we already do support Microsoft conditional access today, but initially we only had one per each instance of Addigy, but most of our MSP partners do use policies for maintaining different tenants and customers. So awesome news! You'll be able to manage multiple accounts of Microsoft.
I see we did receive a comment. Thunderous applause for multi-tenancy and conditional access. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I will relay that back to the team. They're super excited about that. And most importantly, on the realm of iOS, we're bringing the iOS self-service. So the self-service application that you'll love on macOS, and so we're bringing similar functionality to iOS devices, and that is something to look forward to in Q4. And we're also making improvements to your onboarding experience. So you'll soon be able to have an app that walks your first-time users. So especially in the realm of bringing Windows users into Mac. And so we're going to be providing an application that's going to walk them through each step through the way, even through the DEP enrollments, like the Apple Business Manager enrollment. We're going to walk you through each step of the way and then provide a rich experience. And then so that's going to add a lot of value. And there's so much potential for that application in the future, which I'm super excited to talk about in the next League of Champions, because we have so much more to talk about there. But yeah, those are some of the things. And there's much more. And I would love for you guys.
Much more. Yeah. Well, very good. Thank you very much for joining us.